don't shoot unless you see them. A few days later, Fox Company went across the river looking for Ivan. Lieutenant Toshi led the patrol. Lieutenant Wilkinson and Staff Sergeant Runyon were the new heads of 1st Platoon. Runyon was fresh out of Staff Academy and had spent approximately 36 hours in Russia. Doc and I tagged behind Toshi. Eclair disappeared into 2nd Platoon. The company made it halfway to the Ilium Fortress before we made contact. We hadn't walked into an ambush, but we were stepping on an unwelcome doormat. As Russian metal pounded the buildings of the industrial center around us, we all broke for cover. An RPG came screaming by us. Toshi grabbed Sergeant Correa, his radio operator, by the collar and threw him into a door and dove on top of him. Toshi caught shrapnel in his flak, but nothing got through to his skin. I was in the adjacent building. I fired a few rounds from my AK and grabbed my camera. Lieutenant Toshi leaned out from the building, balanced his rifle, and fired at Ivan. One of the Russian soldiers took a hit to the waist and spun to the ground. He managed to crawl away before he was killed. The enemy hailed fire upon us. They threw smoke grenades and charged. When they got to our line, Correa swung his K-bar at an enemy soldier and stuck him on the helmet. Correa's knife snapped into 3 or 4 splinters. Toshi grabbed that Russian soldier by the helmet and dragged him into the building through the window. He pulled on the helmet to choke the soldier with the neck strap. The strap broke and Toshi flung the helmet away. The lieutenant leapt back towards the Russian with his rifle to club him, but he managed to get away into the smoke. Toshi glared into the thick plumes like a lion searching for prey. He turned back and grabbed the radio to call a contact report. We fought the Russians close. Some Marines managed to shoot, but most of us were using our fists. Doc and I had fallen into the street and were fighting Ivan with our tomahawks. Men from both sides shouted as they killed and groaned, and as they were slain, I swung my axe hard enough to crack through a soldier's helmet. The axe head stuck in the man's skull and blood poured over his eyes. I had to kick him to get the blade free. When the soldier was on the ground, his comrades pulled him away by the feet, away from the battle. Doc swung his tomahawk and hit a soldier in the right of his chest. The momentum carried the blade all the way up to his shoulder. Another soldier charged Doc as he was screaming at the top of his lungs. Doc moved to the side and the soldier missed. Instead, he drove his bayonet into a Marine that was carrying off a wounded man. That pissed me off. I screamed and threw my tomahawk at the Russian with the bayonet. My axe found its mark on the soldier's temple right under the helmet. I pulled my weapon out of his skull and swung 3 or 4 more times till the concrete below him was stained with blood. Lieutenant Toshi screamed through the radio to advance. I helped Doc carry the wounded Marines in the street to a truck to be evacuated. Walking back towards the advancing company, I picked up the AK with the bayonet that the Russian soldier had carried, as well as a few more magazines from the troops. There was one Russian lying on the ground screaming. It looked like a grenade had taken off most of his right shin and ankle. I could see the bones, sinew, and gore. He reached out his hands for his friends that had left him behind, gasping his last breaths. I put my new bayonet into his chest and drug it down towards his groin. His guts spewed onto the ground, and the life left his eyes. Fox Company took another few buildings and dug in. Lieutenant Toshi told us that we were to hold the position until the rest of the battalion got to us.
We're not gonna let Ivan sucker us in and surround us.
We spent an hour defending our position before the battalion arrived. Toshi ran to the platoons.
Don't shoot at Ivan unless you see him. Conserve your ammo so we don't get overrun waiting for the rest of the battalion to get here. Last thing we need is to be alone out here without ammo.
Russian bullets chipped away at our cover, but we didn't fire back unless we saw a soldier. When the battalion came to the line, Lieutenant Colonel Memnon led the assault forward. Our Daedalus support gave several tons of fire and brimstone to Ivan for his birthday, and we charged into the fury. A Memnon fired at a Russian and flew out the inner part of his chest above his flak jacket. Another Marine shot a Russian soldier in the face, and his teeth and tongue flew out of his mouth. Mortar fire fell on us as we charged through the streets. I looked for cover, but found none. I curled up in a ball as close to a wall as I could while thunderous shrapnel and flame hailed from the sky. I saw a dud mortar shell hit a Marine in the shoulder and sever his arm. Small Doc Evans ran to the screaming Marine and dragged him into a building.
"It looks like he got good boots!"
I yelled at Doc. He replied,
"Yeah, I'm glad they're not shitting their pants."
The mortars stopped falling. I could hear a Russian soldier yelling, rallying his troops to battle in the distance. Machine gun fire started peppering the street. Doc and I crawled to the closest door we could find. McMillian's squad came in after us. The Russian army came to us like a storm.
"How many of these fuckers are there?"
McMillian fired his rifle out the window. When the Russians reached us, Toshi stabbed a soldier in the collarbone and Correa chucked a grenade into the crowd. Correa grabbed a soldier and dug a bayonet into his temple, then kicked him down. Apparently, Correa didn't stab him deeply enough. The soldier was buckled over on the ground and groaning. He stayed there until more Russian troops trampled over him in the dust. 2 Marines in the street were wounded and helping each other crawl to safety. Both of them were bleeding profusely.
"I can't leave them there!" "Doc, wait!"
I called after him, but he was already out the door.
"McMillian, cover Doc!"
The squad and I started firing over Doc to hold back Ivan. A Russian met Doc over the 2 bleeding Marines. Doc shot him in the gut and he fell over dying. Doc tried to grab the soldier's weapon, but was turned around by the sheer volume of machine gun fire. He grabbed the 2 bleeding Marines, pulling them to cover, and started administering aid. A blast hit our building and knocked us off our feet. Sharpton, one of McMillian's Marines, had a spear of wooden shrapnel sticking out of his neck.
Help me! We gotta get him over to Doc.
McMillian grabbed under Sharpton's arms. Another Marine grabbed his legs.
Give me a fire team. The rest of you wait here and cover us.
The Marines ran out of the building, dragging Sharpton's body over to Doc. Sharpton cried.
Get me.
We opened fire down the street at the enemy's muzzle flashes. I shot 7 of them in the span of a minute. McMillian called the squad over and we hauled 6 or 8 Marines back to the truck to be evacuated. Ivan shot one of McMillian's Marines in the neck under the backside of his helmet. He was dead before he hit the deck. Doc and I loaded him into the truck with the other casualties and closed the door. The truck sped back to the aid station. A knight flew out of the sky and landed on a building at the end of the block. It started pumping lead into the street, tearing bodies apart, staining the pavement red. A Daedalus screamed through the air towards the knight. The knight fired at the Daedalus but missed. The Daedalus fired a missile and hit above the cockpit. The explosion was terrible. The knight's armor crumpled and burned. The mech fell forward into the street. A whirlwind of black smoke rose from the metal monster up to the sky. We ran back to the building and fired at Ivan. Doc punched a wall. Doc was angry. His eyes were bloodshot and his uniform was stained crimson. I couldn't think of anything to console him. I was also enraged. The sidewalks had trees planted every 20 feet. Most were splintered as if struck by lightning. One of the trees, although leafless, still held a branch. Upon it sat 2 vultures watching the carnage. I'd never seen a vulture look that happy, but those 2 had watering beaks, waiting for the feast they were about to receive. The gumption of those birds made me see red. I aligned my sights on the center of one of the vultures and pulled the trigger. The bullet missed the mark, but it rattled the birds and they flew away. Lieutenant Toshi was firing at the enemy. They seemed to be dwindling. Toshi yelled at the Marines around him.
Keep moving, Marines. If we don't, we'll rot in this shit. If we die, no one will be able to have called us feeble-minded pussies.
With that, the lieutenant jumped into the street and charged up the road. His company stayed hot on his heels. We rushed into the buildings that the Russians occupied and blood spilled on both sides.
I'm fucking scared, Doc. Me too, bro. But fortune favors the bold.
That doesn't mean this shit ain't gonna hurt. Doc and I ran down the street with McMillian's squad. Our rifles shook from firing. We kicked in a door and found ourselves in a room full of Russian soldiers. One of the soldiers tried to bayonet Doc, but Doc's flak jacket stopped it. Doc tried to bayonet him back. His knife went into Ivan's shirt, but it only scraped the skin. Doc jumped on the Russian and they fought like wolves over meat. The Russian stabbed at Doc's belly with a dagger, but his flak shielded him. Doc pulled out his tomahawk and hacked at Ivan's neck. The soldier jerked and Doc's blade hit the Russian's helmet and slid off, just barely slicing his flesh. Ivan staggered back, grabbed a brick and threw it at Doc. Doc smacked it away with his Kevlar. He picked up a larger brick and threw it at the soldier, hitting him in the head. Ivan fell down for a moment. Doc charged him, not wanting him to get away. The soldier found the strength to stand up and jump out the window. While Doc was fighting Ivan, the rest of us, Americans and Russian, fired madly at each other. By the time Doc's scuff was over, the entire Russian platoon and half of McMillian's squad laid entangled together in a mess of blood, guts, and bile on the dusty floor. My flak jacket stopped a round from cutting through my chest, and I had 3 or 4 nicks on my arms and legs. The wounds all stung and bled, but they weren't more than flesh wounds.
Let me see your arm, Hank.
No, I'll take care of it. Fix up the guys worse off than me.
If you're not hurt, you're holding security.
McMillian told his men. Doc and McMillian tended to the wounded. Bama had a bullet rip off half of his ear. He was holding his hand to his head. Tears streamed from his eyes, but he wasn't verbalizing it. Hey, take off your Kevlar, dude. He did, and I opened his aid kit. I took out some thick gauze. Put this on it. I handed it to him. All right, this is gonna hurt a little. You'll be all right. Bama nodded. I took a long green stretch of cloth and fixed the gauze to Bama's head. He winced and gnashed his teeth. I tied it off and slapped his shoulder. You're gonna be all right, dude.
Thanks.
All right, let's go loot these guys for smokes and ammo. Bama and I dug through the dead enemy's pockets and pouches and kept the cigarettes, magazines, daggers, and anything else of interest we found. One of the Russians had a 1911. I pulled it from his belt and spit on his dead face. I kept the pistol. I didn't have a pouch, so I put it in my front pocket. Bama and I distributed the ammo to the Marines that were going to be around. McMillian and Doc bandaged up the rest. McMillian radioed in that he needed help from another squad to carry off the wounded and the dead. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of Sing Got Us Throughout the Fun, Smoke Pit Fairy Tales Part 2. This should be Chapter 15, right? Probably double check that. Anyway, in this one, we got Chuck LaVoki as Doc, Luke Lamana from Wartime Stories as Lieutenant, Toshi Clayton Sims from the Civ Div as McMillian, Bob White as Sharpton, and Jon Q Haskell as Bama. Shout out Canucks. So say what's up to one of your Ranger regiments. You know who you are. Anyway, some updates from my end. Friggin' I have almost all of the... I should probably write this stuff down so I can just read it instead of brain clicking it. But for the third book, the third audio book, I got, I don't know, like 60% of the voices. I got all the male voices accounted for. Most of those are done. I'm still working on the women a little bit. I got a few spots to fill for them, and a good bit of those are being worked on though. What am I talking about? Anyway, I actually probably do have enough to get started on this, or to get started on the third one. Which I kind of wanted to be doing by now, but whatever. It's Monday, January 29th. I wanted to start working on the third one by now, which I could if I really wanted to. But I'm trying to learn from my mistakes in the past, and one of those being is don't start this kind of fucking shit until you have like all of the voice friggin' lines together, because if not, like someone's gonna drop out halfway through, and then I'm gonna have to do like a last minute replacement. And then, at least on YouTube anyway, I wouldn't have the same voice actor for the whole book. Now, I have done something like that in the past, and in the actual audio book that you go get off Audible, that's corrected so that's the same voice actor all the way through. But that is a fucking lot of work to go back and like re-edit all that shit. It's easier just to do it the first time. But that being said though, like once I have all the fucking, stems, lines, whatever you want to call it, I should be able to knock the third book out pretty quick. So here's hoping that happens soon. Anyway, let's check out some comments. Doc Whiskey says, once again, the voice acted version is icing on the yellow cake uranium that is Smoke with Fairy Tales rereading part X. It's absolutely killer trip. Thank you, Doc Whiskey. By the way, I had Smoke with Fairy Tales 10 come out at the beginning of this month, and the 11th book, Order of the Cadices, comes out, and you guys are going to see this Wednesday, so Friday. So that's going to be out in a couple days. That's neat. KC2 Guy says, brother, I try to signal boost every chance I get. Thank you very much. I kind of am relying on word of mouth for all of this. If you can't tell, this is exactly zero budget, and that includes marketing and advertising. So I appreciate when you people, like, share, comment, help out with the algorithm, send it to your friends and all that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, if I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have the money to do anything else for that. So here's hoping one day that'll take off. Tried to get a little bit of media attention on it. I reached out to a bunch of venues, outlets, magazines, newspapers, websites, a couple of podcasts. Almost nobody wrote back, but I did do an interview with Task and Purpose. That was about a month ago, and they said it was gonna be out tomorrow, about a month ago. So I'm sure that'll be hitting sometime soon. I'm holding my breath for it. It's gonna be great. Yeah. Doc Whiskey again asked me if I do the music for these. I do all the music for these. I should release them at some point, or at least make another channel where I kind of like, do the like lo-fi playlist thing. But yes, I do the music for all these videos. Background music, intro music, all the music. Excuse me. I do have some stuff you can check out on Spotify or iTunes or whatever the fuck you want to call it. That's up there. Just look for Trip Ainsworth. I had an EP called Sweat Down Your Back and another one called Battle Damage Assessment. I also had one that's the soundtrack for books 4, 5, and 6. Not the audio books, but the books themselves. I will be re-recording that at some point in the future because I fucking hate it. Not that I don't like the songs, but like I didn't know shit about sound engineering when I made it, and didn't really have anybody to help me out. Not that I didn't ask, but it is one of those things where I can just call it punk rock and be like, no, it sounds shitty on purpose. Draconius15 says this would make a cool animated series with Iron Giant style art. I would really think that'd be cool. That might be a project one day. Like personally, I would like for it to look like something Studio Gainax made in the 90s, or like 80s or 90s Mobile Suit Gundam type stuff. Like if you're thinking Gundam Wing or Iron Blooded Orphans, you're like way too late. I'm thinking of like Stardust Memory or fucking maybe even Zeta Gundam. And while I didn't like Evangelion, I would like for something to look like that. Though, fucking if I get a little bit more of a fucking YouTube following, build up the community a bit, or just find someone that wants to sponsor this kind of thing, animation software and or AI animation software isn't too far off in the future to where I couldn't just do that on my own. Granted, I think that's still a couple years away, and a couple more zeros in my bank account away. But, one day, maybe. That'd be cool. Sir David Daniel of Astoria 9293. Damn, and I'm all caught up, eagerly awaiting more. Be happy to lend a voice free of charge. I got a little secret for you. No one's getting paid for this. Not even me. Now, I would like to pay voice actors, but like right now it's all volunteer. Like I'm not getting any ad revenue off this. And the little Patreon money I do get goes to gasoline. But hopefully that'll pick up sooner in the future. Sooner in the future. Like on one hand, I'm kind of upset that, I am where I am. Not just on YouTube, like cross everything. I mean, I started publishing these in 2016. But I do have to remind myself that this particular YouTube channel that we're watching, I think started in September. It's January now. So I think like 300 followers and some change like isn't too bad, right? That's good, right? Like so far so good, so what? We got a glass half full this, all right? Rex, hey, I'm back.
making beanie weenies with onion. First off, Rex, glad you're back. Thanks for showing. Thanks for tuning in. Secondly, do you know what the difference between an onion and a hooker is? I cry when I cut up onions. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. Here are your bloopers. Chew.
All right, microphone testing. 1, 2, 3. Also, my mouse is about dead, so I'm gonna let it charge while I record. Have fun editing this shit, Trip. Sucks to be you.
Chapter 15.
I should actually need my mouse for this, don't I? Fuck. Whatever.
Keep moving, Marines. If we don't, we're rotting this shit. If we die, no one will be able to have us called feeble-minded pussies. What? If we die, no one will be able to have us called feeble-minded pussies. Okay.
Oh my god, we are not doing this shit today. The lieutenant leapt back towards the Trushan. That's what I think about the Trushans. That was a scream for you there, Trip. Have fun with that. The lieutenant leapt back towards the Trushan. Quit saying Trushan, Trip. Fuck. I'm gonna do this whole thing like I'm Alex Jones. Till it's stained with blood. I'm strong. I'm full of cum.
My God. How do you say a line like that? How do you take yourself seriously, like, in this situation? I don't even know.
There was one Russian lying on the ground screaming. It looked like a grenade had taken off most of his right sin. Fuck.